Bernie Ecclestone walked into the motorhome at Imola on May 1, 1994, looked at Ayrton Senna's brother Leonardo, and delivered two words that hang over Formula One 30 years later. "He's dead." Senna's press officer documented that Ecclestone followed that statement with something much darker, noting they were not announcing the fatality yet, so the race would not be stopped. The paddock operated in a state of psychological ruin after Roland Ratzenberger died the day before during qualifying. Sid Watkins warned Senna to abandon the weekend entirely. Lap 7 arrived. Senna's Williams shot off at Tamburello and absolute silence fell across the circuit. Live broadcast viewers held on to hope, but behind the scenes, senior figures understood the situation was terminal long before the official announcement surfaced hours later. Leonardo Senna sobbed uncontrollably and shook inside the motorhome. The shock compounded when the family learned the race would continue regardless. If a driver died at the circuit, Italian law reportedly required the race to be stopped. The event continued anyway. Official communication remained carefully controlled, with the FIA telling journalists Senna suffered head injuries and was in transit to the hospital. Two parallel realities operated inside Imola. Publicly, medical teams treated an injured driver, while privately, key figures allegedly knew no hope remained. Watkins arrived and confirmed the worst possible scenario immediately, verifying Senna had effectively died at the track. Ecclestone admitted years later that concerns existed around what cancelling the race meant commercially, referencing refunds, public reaction, and chaos for promoters. He claimed cancelling would have created big drama, pointing out no drivers actively demanded the race be abandoned. The drivers' briefing that morning felt strangely normal despite Ratzenberger's death, proving danger had become normalized and fatal risk sat permanently in the background. Michael Schumacher won the race, the podium ceremony proceeded, and champagne sprayed while the paddock already understood Formula One had lost its central star. Ecclestone faced an initial ban from Ayrton's funeral in Sao Paulo due to anger surrounding the motorhome conversation and the decision to keep racing. Barrichello survived a horrifying crash Friday. Ratzenberger died Saturday, and Senna died Sunday. Max Mosley believed Ecclestone thought the death could destroy the sport commercially and culturally forever, fearing sponsors would panic and governments would intervene. Senna transcended the sport as a massive Brazilian icon, and his funeral triggered one of the largest public mourning events in the country's history. In 2024, Ecclestone claimed a misunderstanding occurred with Sid Watkins, stating he thought Watkins meant head injuries when he said Senna was dead. Ecclestone claimed telling Leonardo caused unnecessary trouble and noted he traveled to Brazil to repair the relationship, leading to the funeral ban getting lifted. The hidden information, the continuation of the race, and the commercial pressure permanently broke trust. That extreme emotional detachment was not born in the 1990s. Long before the television deals and political dominance, Ecclestone watched drivers burn to death. At the end of 1968, he warned Jochen Rindt that winning the World Championship meant driving for Lotus, but staying alive meant driving for Brabham. 2 years later, Rindt was dead in a Lotus. Ecclestone had already lost Stuart Lewis Evans in 1958. Lewis Evans crashed at the Moroccan Grand Prix when his Van Wall's transmission locked, sparking a massive fuel fire. He survived the initial impact but died 6 days later from severe burns at just 28 years old. That loss shattered Ecclestone completely, pushing him to disappear from Formula One for a decade. Rindt represented the closest thing he had to a superstar son figure inside racing. Lotus built fragile machines right on the edge of destruction. Rindt crashed during practice at the 1970 Italian Grand Prix after a brake shaft failure on the Lotus 72, dying at 28 just like Lewis Evans. Ecclestone carried Rindt's helmet away from the crash site in tears. He brought Rindt's wife Nina and Sally back to London on a plane. He admitted needing tranquilizers to function because he wasn't coping well. He stepped away from the sport again. When he returned in 1972 to buy Brabham, he returned as a team owner, swapping emotional dependency for business leverage and distance. The old Formula One killed people constantly, making order look necessary. Rindt became Formula One's only posthumous world champion, securing such a huge lead that nobody could catch him after his death. Owning a team turned that defensive distance into a ruthless management system. During the 1985 Monaco Grand Prix, Ecclestone called Mark Schurer directly and demanded to know why he was not racing in Formula One properly. Riccardo Patrese and Elio De Angelis lost their situations around Brabham, and Schurer received a firm offer while still driving for Arrows. Drivers were entirely replaceable assets. Schurer knew Brabham was declining, the Pirelli tyres lacked pace, and his own legs were permanently damaged from an ATS crash. BMW backing secured the seat. Derek Warwick encountered the exact same negotiating violence in 1986. Elio De Angelis died testing the BT-V5 at Paul Ricard, leaving an immediate vacancy. Warwick pumped himself up to demand millions, believing a dead man's seat carried enormous leverage. He wanted time to speak with Gordon Murray and Charlie Whiting to understand the engineering direction. Ecclestone listened for 5 minutes and forced a brutal ultimatum, telling Warwick to sign the contract immediately or walk out the door. Warwick waited 9 days to call out of respect, which Ecclestone appreciated, but the moment money entered the conversation, the door slammed shut. Warwick admitted he possessed no bargaining power whatsoever and folded instantly. After signing, mechanics gave him thumbs up around the factory, offering human warmth only after the business transaction concluded. Team bosses controlled access completely, and a driver replacing someone who had just died still faced a hard choice because business pressure never stopped. Schurer scored 5 points in 1985 and finished 4th at Brands Hatch. He survived the comparison with Piquet better than expected, but fully understood he lived in Piquet's shadow. Piquet was very quick, very good, and very knowledgeable, establishing the team hierarchy before Schurer even arrived. Schurer's rally crash in 1986 effectively ended his career. Modern Formula One teams build narratives around development, talk about long-term projects, and protect young drivers publicly, even when the pressure is massive. Ecclestone's Brabham operated closer to a moving casino table. People complain Red Bull is harsh now, but Brabham would have looked savage even by current standards. The system produced results, giving BMW exposure and keeping the team relevant in the turbo war longer than many rivals. Formula One does not punish you for being ruthless if brutal management keeps producing titles. Teams became more media-trained and corporate, but underneath, the logic never fully disappeared. Drivers remain assets until they stop producing value. Ecclestone made careers with one phone call and destabilized them with another immediately after. Older stories fascinate fans because the politics were raw, power was concentrated, and team bosses acted more like football owners mixed with gamblers than corporate executives. Schurer still sounded grateful for the opportunity because a top team seat in the turbo era felt so valuable. Even delivering multiple championships offered zero protection. Nelson Piquet carried Brabham through 2 title-winning campaigns but spent 7 years feeling underpaid while watching Alain Prost earn 3 times more. Ecclestone paid Piquet around $1 million. Piquet demanded $2 million after winning the 1981 and 1983 world titles. Frank Williams showed up with an offer of $3.3 million plus bonuses for every championship point scored, backed by massive Honda power and active suspension development. Piquet snapped publicly in Austria in 1985, complaining he had been screwed around on money for 7 years and questioning the rating system since Prost was not 3 times better. Piquet carried intense anger over doing the equivalent of 75 Grand Prix worth of testing to develop Pirelli tyres without proper financial reward. Piquet left, and Brabham never won another race, starting a rapid decline that ended with Ecclestone selling the team. The Williams-Honda package proved frighteningly fast in 1986 and 1987, creating a poisonous rivalry between Piquet and Nigel Mansell. Piquet loved the psychological warfare, publicly mocking Mansell by pointing out their cultural differences, noting he was a Latin who liked lots of girls while Mansell was British and stuck to one. Mansell attacked weekends with wild aggression, winning 7 races in 1987 while Piquet won 3. Piquet managed the championship mathematically, protecting the bigger picture and collecting points constantly. Mansell crashed heavily during Suzuka qualifying, breaking his back and mathematically handing Piquet the championship before the race began. The driver Brabham refused to pay secured a 3rd world title. Piquet executed his own political warfare inside Brabham before leaving. Ecclestone admitted Piquet actively lobbied the team's main sponsor to stop Ayrton Senna from joining. At a Paul Ricard test in November 1983, Piquet set a 1:5.90 benchmark in the BT52B BMW, while Senna landed 2 seconds back with a 1:07.90. Piquet made a $100,000 bet with Ecclestone that Senna would not get within a second of his time, winning the cash when the rookie fell short. Piquet contacted Parmalat, arguing one Brazilian in the team was enough and suggesting they take an Italian instead. Teo Fabi secured the seat. Ecclestone realized Senna possessed massive potential specifically because Piquet aggressively blocked him. Senna signed with Toleman, showcased ridiculous speed in wet conditions, and became a triple world champion. Frank Williams operated with the exact same ruthless detachment. Damon Hill won the championship in 1996 and discovered trophies offered no security inside a team that treated champions like temporary contractors. Hill led the team through the dark period after Senna died, carrying the #1 car alongside rookie Jacques Villeneuve. Hill's management reportedly asked for $12 million, roughly 5 times his previous salary. Patrick Head described the negotiations as arrogant, calling the financial demands colossal. Williams looked at Heinz-Harald Frentzen, available for $6 million, and replaced his lead driver before Hill even secured the title. Every win felt temporary, carrying a bitter demand to prove worth. Hill admitted the decision caused immense pain. Frentzen carried huge hype, younger demographics, and German marketability, but never evolved into the expected superstar. Hill joined Arrows, nearly winning in Hungary through a historic underdog drive. Frank Williams later admitted it was a serious error of judgment not to re-sign Hill. Frank respected drivers, but the organization always mattered more than any individual, building champions while burning relationships. Hill climbed into Formula One late, carried Graham Hill's heavy legacy, and felt distinctly human to British fans. The team celebrated another title while confirming the future belonged to someone else. Damon Hill standing there as world champion. Cameras flashing, champagne everywhere, while sitting underneath all of it was the reality that the team decided the future belonged to somebody else. Fans talk about driver eras, but team bosses think in cycles of efficiency. The second sentiment becomes more expensive than replacement value. The conversations change behind closed doors. If you think that mentality disappeared after the 90s, look at how quickly teams move on from drivers now the second performance dips or contract numbers stop matching expectations. The pattern never died. Bernie controlled information flow, access, commercial pressure points, television deals, and paddock politics. He turned Formula One from a fragmented motorsport championship into a giant traveling business machine worth billions. There is no evidence Ecclestone intervened in Hill's 1996 contract negotiations, as the actual negotiations were between Williams' management and Hill's side. Does a championship culture actually require stripping away human empathy, or did the architects of the sport simply use winning as an excuse to operate without a conscience? This cold isolation defined the entire sport's leadership, creating an environment disconnected from empathy. When Danica Patrick finished 4th in the Indianapolis 500 in 2005, marking the best finish by a woman in the race's history at the time, Ecclestone casually stated women should be dressed in white like all the other domestic appliances. The quote landed as old-fashioned, sexist, and dismissive, exploding across motorsport media. Days later, Ecclestone called Patrick directly. He complimented her driving performance, seemingly setting up a standard public relations apology. He then repeated the exact same domestic appliances insult directly to her on the phone. Patrick expressed total confusion, stating she just didn't make sense of the exchange. She admitted surprise that somebody would say those words directly to her in private rather than through headlines. She noted she did not know if he meant women generally, someone else specifically, or if those were his real feelings. Since she drove in the Indy Racing League, she stated publicly it did not matter much because she was not racing in Formula One. Formula One already suffered from a massive macho paddock culture problem, filled with grid girls and old-school leadership questioning if women belonged in elite racing. The Ecclestone quote summarized the entire era in one sentence. Repeating the insult privately proved he knew exactly what he said and stood by it. Patrick survived 500 miles at one of motorsport's hardest events, proving her talent and racecraft. Yet the conversation twisted back to basic respect. Ecclestone later offered positive comments regarding her career, creating a bizarre inconsistency where he mixed praise with insults stuck in another century. Fans looked at the incident and saw confirmation of exactly what leadership looked like behind closed doors. The sport's leadership admired talent, craved controversy, demanded attention, and sounded completely disconnected from reality. The Williams garage sits empty on Sunday morning. The 2026 regulations loom over the current grid. Contracts expire at the end of the season. How long until the next reigning champion discovers their access card no longer works?